Hey, welcome to the Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. This is Dianne, your lactation consultant.
And this is Abby, the Badass Breastfeeder.
And good morning. How are you?
Good morning. You don't usually know what time of day it is, but it's morning for us this time.
Right. I really feel like I needed to say that. I don't know why.
It feels different. This episode might have a slightly different feel to it because we don't normally record at this time of day. So we just are in different, people are in different headspaces and different times of the day. And this is bright and early in the morning. We might not have the usual filter that we usually have because, we have great head to mouth filters.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Here.
It's, we're all about that. Mm-hmm. I have the review of the week, though.
Yes. Review of the week. Yay.
It is from Eats Poop.
This is my new best friend.
I know, right? And she says, such great information for breastfeeding moms. And these ladies seem so down to earth and relatable. Thank you so much.
Oh, and that's so sweet.
Yeah, it is. And that's really what we wanted. Like, we could have done like a really clinical scientific podcast, or we could have done, like interviews with all the, but we just wanted to make it stuff that was going on right now, stuff that you could deal with right now, stuff that gives you information.
Right. And presented in a conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I can't do this. It's just not my personality. It's not yours either. Yeah. The stuffy, I love science. I love science and I love talking about it. And I love that we are, science and evidence based like people. But, I think it needs to be presented in a more lighthearted way so that most people can kind of relate to it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's pretty much how I run my whole business. I'm like, okay, this is the deal.
Right.
And with that,
thank
today,
you.
We are going to talk about a topic that gets us both heated. Well, every topic gets us both heated, but we're going to talk about overfeeding and how much breast milk babies should be getting by bottle.
Yeah, this is such a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that most people know it, and not that you would.
Right. Why would you?
Why would you? Yeah. And so this came up because somebody messaged me, and I say somebody, and what I should say is like 5 people a day message me and they say, I can't keep up with my baby. I'm pumping as much as I can when I'm at work or whatever. And my baby is drinking this amount. And usually they tell me a really, really high number, which they probably don't realize is a really high number. And I just can't keep up. And so usually when you get down to the bottom of it, 99% of the time, the caregiver is overfeeding the baby. And that's not at all on purpose. Like bottle feeding is just so different from breastfeeding. It's hard to really know how much to bottle feed. You just think that you just bottle feed until they're full. Right? Until they stop eating.
But that's not accurate. And that a lot of times is the message that mothers get when there's a newborn. A very newborn out of the hospital. And I know you can relate to this too. They say, supplement your baby. If your baby's not gaining well, how much should I give? Oh, just until they won't take anymore. Well, they're like 2 days old. How do they know? They
don't know how to stop. And you put something that they want to, you put something in their mouth, they're going to suck on it. That's what they do. They're babies. They're sucking. That's what they do. That's all they can do.
It's a reflex.
It's all they want to do. Yes. They have no choice in the matter. They have something in their mouth. They're going to suck on it. They're not like, I'm full. I'm going to stop sucking now. They have no idea how to do that.
No, they don't know when they're full. They don't know what full feels like. They don't know what hungry feels like. Those are all sensations.
And they have no idea how to stop the sucking motion.
Right. Then fast forward to your older baby, and I mean, they will, if you give it to them, often they will take it, but caregivers really don't know. And I think also a lot of times if you have a caregiver, I don't care if it's your grandmother, if it's a family friend, if it's a, babysitter, whatever, daycare, if they are used to formula feeding, they will overfeed your breastfed baby.
Yeah.
It just will happen. You have to be very, very specific about what you want done with that baby because they will definitely overfeed.
Yeah. And again, those two things are very different. Formula feeding and breast milk through a bottle feeding.
Yep. And we're going to talk about why that's
ways
different.
To do this.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's talk about it.
Okay. So here we go. So one of the things now, and I hear this all the time too. So first of all, when people email Abby or me or the podcast and they say, you know, this is happening. It's usually kind of a blanket statement of, I can't keep up with my baby. What should I do to increase my supply? And first of all, that's a huge question. That's not something that we can answer just by saying, oh, just do A, B, and C. Like, we need to know, like, what's really happening. Is there really a supply issue? Is this a case of overfeeding?
There's usually not a supply issue.
Right. There's usually not a supply issue. But if this is a case of overfeeding, like, I always ask, like, what is your baby getting when you're gone? You know, usually it's when moms go back to work and, you know, all of that stuff. But what is your baby getting when you're gone? And if they are getting, you know, a significant amount of milk, when we say that, we mean like probably more than 4 ounces. That is too much. That's too much.
That's like, that's a lot.
Yeah. So a couple of things that I want people to remember, first of all, is breastfed babies, they don't take the same amount of milk when they breastfeed. You know, and it's just like us. When we sit down to a meal, we don't eat the same exact amount every time we sit down. We eat what we want to. You know, maybe we're not that hungry at breakfast, so we just eat a little bit. And then at lunch, we'll maybe eat a bigger meal, whatever. But we don't eat the same amount every single time we go to eat. And breastfed babies are the same way. They take what they want. So then you put them in a situation where they're away from you for 8 hours and they're getting a structured 4 ounces, 3 hours later, 4 ounces, 3 hours later, 4 ounces. I mean, that's a lot of milk for them. They would not take that much milk if they were breastfeeding.
Right. And I even think that, I mean, what I hear, of course, I don't know the details of what everybody tells me, but I hear 4 ounces every 2 hours. A lot.
I hear that a lot too.
I feel like that's what I hear a lot. And that is so much. And this is why then people are like, I can't keep up with my baby. And you can. There's nothing wrong with you. You absolutely can keep up with your baby. Your body is working fine. The problem is on the other end. Mm-hmm.
The other thing,
but this creates such panic.
It does. It really does.
It must feel. I didn't pump. Like I've told a million times, I quit my job when I had my first son. But I can't even imagine the panic.
I know.
It must be so terrifying to just think that like you just can't keep up.
And what we are telling you to do is to be really confident in the fact that your baby is getting enough from you. And that's hard. That's a hard thing to do. And the other thing that we come across is, you know, babies are fussy. So then people feed them again. Well, the baby was fussy. So I gave them more.
It must be hungry.
And that's not the case. Your baby is away from you. They're going to be fussy. The person that's taking care of your baby, I don't even care if it's your partner, whoever, they're going to be different with that person.
Well, also, babies are fussy for all kinds of reasons.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, maybe it's really bright in the room. Maybe they're cold. Maybe they're hot. Maybe it's too loud. Maybe, you don't have any idea. I mean, babies are fussy for a million different reasons. It's not automatically because they're hungry. And actually, I mean, like crying is like a late feeding cue. Right. I mean, like that's, babies generally don't like get to the point of like being so hungry that they're crying.
Right.
Usually there's something else going on.
Right.
They need to be comforted. They probably need to be held or rocked or whatever.
Right. Yeah. And it's just, you know your baby so well, and it's such an instinct for you to know what to do with your baby because you're a breastfeeding mom that you just learn them that easy. Like it just really comes very, very easily and instinctively. But then you pass that baby off to somebody else and they don't know your baby like that.
Right. And that's the thing is like when you have your baby, when you're with your baby, the answer to everything is to nurse them. That's absolutely true. Mm-hmm. Like absolutely try that first every single time. But then if they're with the caregiver and they have, you've got breast milk in the bottle and that can't be the answer for everything. Oh my, just go and grab a bottle.
Right. That's
going to put you behind. That's overfeeding.
Right. And then what happens when you overfeed? Okay. We're going to look at the big picture here. If you have a baby that is being overfed by bottle, they're probably, and some say, oh, but they took it. They took it. Yeah. Yep. They took it. Absolutely. So now you bring that baby home. They've had more than half of their daily intake in 8 hours while they're away from you. And they're not going to breastfeed well when they're home. It is going to switch up their breastfeeding pattern, which is probably going to cause a milk supply issue for you because now they're not eating well at home with you. It is going to probably interrupt their sleeping patterns. it is going to really kind of throw a monkey wrench into things. So it's not even just about like, okay, they're overfeeding and I got to keep up with them. It really impacts how they feed when they're with you again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really like a spiral. It's a domino effect. It's going to start to affect everything.
It really does. And I've had moms say, oh, well, you know what? Now that I think about it, the baby's spitting up way more since they've been, since I went back to work and they're being watched every day. Baby's spitting up a lot more. The baby sleeps when I bring him home instead of nursing. And, it's a different pattern and that will impact your supply. So you really have to be very, very diligent about like, okay, this is what my baby needs. Now, first of all, breastfed babies do not need as many ounces as formula fed babies do. So you will see situations, and some people will even tell you, oh, but this baby is the same age and they're taking 6 ounces. So your baby's only taking 3. They're way behind. That is not the case. With formula, it is very different. It is structured differently. It has different hormones in it. It has different nutrients in it. It is not metabolized the same way. So you need more. The vitamin and nutrients don't change. Whereas in the breast milk, the vitamins and nutrients and all of the structure changes to adapt to what the baby needs. So as they get older, they don't really need more volume because everything is in there. And when you're formula feeding, you have to continue to add more so that the baby will get what they need.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it really is cool.
That's so cool. Like they
milk,
don't drink more as they age because the breast milk is changing.
Right.
That's amazing.
And the breast milk has hormones in it that tell the babies that they're full, just like it has, the hormones in it to tell them that they're sleepy at night, like things like that. So it has the hormones in it to tell them, that they're full, whereas it doesn't, and to, work differently with their metabolism, whereas formula doesn't have that. So that is why your breastfed baby does not need more volume. They don't need more volume at all. And they're fine. But formula fed babies need an increase. Formula fed babies are also notoriously overfed by and the studies that they have done show crazy amount. And they've done very large studies with babies that are formula fed, and they shows how much more overweight and overfed they are.
Well, I think any baby that's being fed by a bottle is going to be overfed if the person has not been taught the careful skill of bottle feeding.
Exactly.
Because we just think, I always thought too, you just put the bottle in their mouth and, you take it out when they fall asleep or whatever. But there's actually a skill to bottle feeding that people have to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, they're going to be overfed.
They're going to be overfed. They could be gassier. They could spit up more. They could be fussier. Babies should not be gulping their food down in 2 minutes. We don't do that.
Right.
And I know we're
not supposed to anyway.
We're not supposed to. And I always kind of compare it back to but they're little humans. They're just the same as us. They're little human beings. They should be eating slowly. It should take them as long to bottle feed as it does to breastfeed. They should be taking a few sips, take the bottle out, let them kind of, swallow, readjust, put the bottle back in. It's a paced feeding pattern.
So this is called paced bottle feeding.
Yes.
And you can Google it, or even better, we'll put a link to a reliable resource to paced bottle feeding on our website, resources page. So can you describe that really? Is there positions that they should be feeding in? I mean, you said a little bit at a time.
Yeah. And they should be kind of upright, almost sitting upright, not laying, reclined back so that the milk is just flowing into their mouth. So the baby should be sitting a little bit upright. And the bottle should be horizontal, so it's not tipped in and flowing. So the baby has to suck to pull the milk out.
Uh-huh.
And you do, a couple of sucks and swallows and break the suction, pull the bottle out. Sometimes people say, oh, the baby cries when I do that. It's a pattern. They get used to it. It's a process. They're not crying because they're, pissed at you or anything. It's just not they don't, it's
that's all they know how to do.
Right. So it's fine. Don't worry about it. You're doing a good thing in the long run. You're trying to pace this feed.
Yeah, you're learning to bottle feed and they're learning to bottle feed.
Exactly. So they, then after they get, maybe, I don't know, an ounce, maybe not even quite an ounce, you can stop and burp them. Babies that are that are bottle feeding take in more air. So they do need to be burped in between. Otherwise, you can get more spitting up. You can get more fussiness with that. So burping them more frequently is really helpful. Sometimes people will ask about like, well, I bought this bottle. It's supposed to be good for breastfeeding. It doesn't matter. It's not the bottle. It's more of how you feed it to the baby. I mean, maybe some bottles have like, I don't know, there are some bottles now that have all kinds of stuff inside that are supposed to like slow it. I don't even know about that. But the nipple itself, like there are slow flow nipples and there are like nipples that are, faster flow for an older baby. Breastfed babies should always be a slow flow nipple. Always. And if it's a paced feeding, it should be a paced feeding. So it's not really about like, okay, what kind of nipple is on the bottle necessarily or anything like that or what kind of bottle. It's more about how you feed it to them or even what's in the bottle. It's more about how you feed it to them.
Mm-hmm. And so this is something that if you have a caregiver, so it's your mother-in-law, grandma, husband, whatever, partner, that's a little person that's like maybe a little bit easier to talk to about this because you can go onto Google, you can type in, paste. You don't have to do that. Go to our website, badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. It'll be on the resources section, paste bottle feeding. And you can print it out or whatever and give it to your caregiver and you can, just talk to them a little bit about it. And if they don't get it the first day, it's okay. Don't worry. They'll learn it. But then if you have a daycare or something where they're taking care of a lot of babies at once, it might be a little bit harder to break in there because they've probably got their standard, practice that they've always been doing. So it's going to be a little bit more difficult to do that with them. But so, I mean, some of the things that you can do, I think, and I mean, Diane, you chime in, like maybe just filling bottles with just the right amount of milk that they would need for that one feeding.
Yep, absolutely.
So you're not like, okay, well, here's a bottle with like, giant bottle with 10 ounces of milk in it. Well, just feed them a little bit of that each time.
Or
they're
extra.
Not going to do that. Yeah.
Don't
give extra. Just give like, this is for each feeding and that's all. So you'll have to, if it's a daycare, I mean, every daycares are all different. So some people have really good experiences. Some people have a more difficult time communicating with them. So you'll have to just figure out what your kind of daycare you have and try to communicate with them about not using up all your breast milk.
And if they say, well, I think the baby still needs more, the baby's really fussy, talk to them maybe about things that they can do to calm the baby or soothe the baby. Yeah. One of my, a friend of mine and a colleague of my husband, actually, she's getting ready to go back to work soon. And we were talking about this stuff. And she had a really great point where she had her sister watching the baby for the first time when they went to like a wedding or something like that. And her sister gave the baby like 3.5 ounces. And the baby was like, I don't know, only a few weeks old. Like 3.5 ounces. She's like, she's still hungry. She's still hungry. And my friend was like, so for the last few weeks, she's been only with me and she's been fine. But the day I leave her with you is a day that she needs to eat more. Like that doesn't even make any sense. And it's kind of the same thing. Like, okay, now your baby is fine and taking a certain amount. And a lot of people obviously practice with bottle feeding and introduce bottles before they go back to work. And then they bring the baby to a care provider. And after the first couple days, they call and say, okay, the baby's you need to leave more milk because this isn't enough. But it's been enough all along. But now all of a sudden it's not enough anymore. Mm-hmm. Like we need to really think about like, okay, what's happening here? It's not the baby. They don't know how to calm them, they just don't know how to calm your baby. Now, if people are kind of giving you a hard time about the paced feeding, one of the things I think moms should kind of put out there is a lot of times, especially if it's a family member or like grandma or whoever that says, I want to feed the baby. Can't you pump a bottle? Paced bottle feeding, they will really bond with a baby if they're paced bottle feeding because you are taking your time, you're interacting with them, they're awake, their eyes are open because you're constantly doing something with them. That is a way to bond with a bottle feeding baby.
Yeah, because they're not just like laying on their back.
Exactly.
Getting like milk poured down their gullet.
Yeah.
While you like stare at the TV or something. You know, like that's when I was a teenager, that's how I fed babies.
Right.
Like if I was babysitting or something, I'm like,
Right.
oh, this is what you do. And it's like a Cabbage Patch doll.
Yep. They just snuggle them in and cradle them and put the bottle in there and
Yeah.
that's it. But if they're pace bottle feeding with them, they actually have to interact with them more. So that I would put that kind of spin on it. I'd be like,
Yeah.
you know, this is, you want to
That's
feed the
great.
baby. This is how you're going to interact with them. This is your bonding time, because that is, you know, that's how it needs to be done.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
bottom
that's
line,
great. Grandma will love that.
Oh, yeah.
Like that's really one you can get with that.
yeah. But the bottom line is this is your baby. And it doesn't matter if somebody says to you, oh, but we don't have time to do that. Or I don't think the baby likes that. Or I don't know how to do that. Like, this is your baby and this is the way you want it done. And
Yeah,
that's really
and you're going to
important.
have Yeah, you got to put your foot down. I mean, these people are taking care of your baby.
Mm-hmm.
And if they, you know, if they are having, and you know, we want, I imagine that somebody in this situation who's got to worry about work, who has to worry about like all the logistics of daycare and all this stuff, you want to just have something go easy. Like, I just want to be able to, like, you're a daycare, can take care of my baby. It's like, certainly you know how to do that.
Right.
And then you're going to run into problems. It must be just, you know, it must be really stressful to have to deal with a daycare that's like maybe not really listening to your direction. But yeah, I mean, it is your baby and it might take a little bit of work and a little bit of like, hey, wait a minute. This is what needs to be done with this baby. I'm sorry that you probably don't have like all the information about like breastfeeding, bottle feeding a breastfed baby, and pace bottle feeding. But these are things that you need to learn in order to take care of my baby and not burn through my stash.
Right.
This is precious stash, man. Don't waste it.
And babies really like to suck. And we know that, you know, and like you were saying earlier, you know, when you're with your baby, you just pop them on, you know, whatever, if they need soothing, they need feeding, whatever their issue is, you know, we put them on and a lot of times that soothes them. When they're nursing, we know that they get their milk, but then there's also that little bit of suck time that they have where they're just kind of snuggling with you and they're soothing and they're sucking, but then they get a bottle and that's over. You know what I mean? Their milk goes in and they're done. And then they're fussy. Well, of course they're a little fussy. It doesn't mean they want more. They need to be soothed. They need that.
They just don't have that.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not nursing. When they're nursing, they're not fussing usually.
Right. Usually.
When they're usually, they do. Okay. So they do fuss, but you know, I mean, we're like, yeah, they're soothed by the nursing usually. And, if they don't have that, this could take some extra effort to soothe them.
Yeah. So then one of the other things that I see happen is babies are being overfed at wherever they are during the day. And then the mom tries to breastfeed when she gets home with the baby and the baby doesn't want to nurse or doesn't nurse well or fights the breast. And then the automatic thought is the baby's used to the bottle now. So doesn't want to breastfeed anymore.
Oh, yeah. You hear that all the time.
Yep.
Too.
Hear it all the time. And that is not the case. It's more the fact that the baby doesn't want to eat because they're too full from the day. Mm-hmm. So whenever a mom says to me, oh, the baby, you know, I went back to work and the baby's getting more bottles during the day and now the baby won't breastfeed at night. So I think we've got bottle confusion. It's like, how much is that baby getting to eat? Because that's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is. Your baby is not going to replace you with a plastic bottle. I'm sorry. I just don't believe that that's the case.
Right. And I know you said in another episode, something that stood out to me, which was, you know, when you're talk to the daycare too about, or the care provider about when they're feeding the baby and when that last feeding is going to be. And don't make that last feeding like 10 minutes before you're walking through the door.
Right.
You know, like, you know, you gotta pace the feeding and time the feedings too, to where like, they're going to want to nurse when they see you. Mm-hmm. Not being like overly long time, because then they'll be overly fussy and, you know, all of that. But it's got to be timed well, so where they're not just all, you know, like you said, like full. Right. Not wanting to eat.
Yeah. So there's lots of little things. Now, if you know that all of this stuff is happening and you know, I only leave a certain amount of milk for the baby and I know the baby's not getting more than that and you're still struggling with your supply, then definitely, you know, reach out. But if your daycare is asking for more money, more milk, which they'll do that too. They
might do that. Yeah.
If they're asking for more milk all the time and you're struggling to try to keep up with that, then that definitely needs to be looked at as somebody could be overfeeding. And I've had people tell me that like, well, the daycare went through all the milk before noon. And I was like, what?
Oh my God.
Are you kidding me? Like, that's crazy. They need to,
you have to put your foot down and say, do not do that.
Yeah. And they need specific instructions of how much and when and what time and all of that.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you can do that too. Like on the bottle, you're putting like this certain amount of ounces in there, but then maybe you can add onto the bottle somewhere like the time that should be fed to the baby.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot to it, but we definitely wanted to make sure we did one episode on this because we do get a lot of questions. And I know we touched on it before when we talked about like going back to work and stuff, but overfeeding by bottle is a so big common thing. It's common. It's
really common. Yeah. And I think that like, if you are struggling with, if you're working or whatever you're doing, your baby's getting a bottle, I would just automatically assume that overfeeding could be happening and to look into it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And do a little research on it, and not like as if you Google, how much milk should my baby be getting? You'll get all sorts of formula sites that come up, or, all sorts of information that comes up for formula fed babies. But it's very, very different for breastfeeding babies. I actually did find a good article on it. I'll post it on our website by Nancy Moorbacher, who's really great. So,
she has a good pace bottle feeding.
Yeah,
she even has a printout for caregivers.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's
that
awesome.
we can put on the website too.
Yeah, yeah. And that way it doesn't have to come even out of your mouth. You can just hand it to somebody. And
right, just hand it to them. I think it's like they got pictures and stuff and everything.
Yeah, like perfect.
Thank you so much for listening, guys. I hope that helps.
I know. I hope it helps. And like you said, if anything else comes up, definitely, or we weren't clear on something, feel free to reach out. But good luck with it because, have confidence that you're doing the right thing for your baby.
Yes. And please share your experience in the review section on iTunes, and maybe you'll be our review of the week. And you can head to badassbreastfeedingpodcast.com. And you'll find sponsor links, you'll find promo codes, you'll find a resources page with links, and you'll find all of our other episodes. And you will also find out how you can schedule your online consultation with Dianne.
Woohoo!
And you can also find us on YouTube at Badass Breastfeeding Podcast. Bye.
Bye.